who have legally killed someone. What is your story, and does the experience still affect you today? I paralyzed someone in a high school football scrimmage, and they later died, years later, from complications resulting from the paralysis. I became friends of the family, and they have emphasized over and over again that it was not my fault, but I still feel guilt, and it weighs on me. A guy attacked me in a party. I punched him in response. He fell to the ground and hit his head. That was it. No last words, no agony, no nothing. It happened so fast it doesn't feel real. I was just defending myself, so I can't say I feel guilty. But it feels weird. It's so easy to lose your life. I wasn't trying to kill him. I just responded to his attack out of reflex. I never thought something like that would happen. Do yourselves a favor and don't start fights, because life is more fragile than you think. The guy's family tried to put me in jail, but luckily there were enough witnesses and I was released. However, I moved out of town shortly after, afraid that his family would seek revenge. I had to make the decision to shut off my 10 years old son's ventilator when he was dying from complications of his genetic neuromuscular disease. He was on hospice. I held his hand the whole time and felt his heart stop. This was in 2022. It haunts me every single day. I have nightmares and panic attacks. Was the victim of a break-in when I was 20. Was over at my buddy's house for a few days. His parents had just left for work, and the guy probably thought the house was empty. I was in the bathroom and heard a loud bang bang bang. Almost sounded like a hammer hitting a wall. Wasn't all too concerned, until about 15 seconds later I hear my friend shouting, and then something breaking. So I got out of the bathroom quick as hell, and that's when I heard the burglar saying, "Let go, I'm gonna fucking stab you." I couldn't see anything from the end of the hall, but I knew something bad was happening. And time just felt slow, and I just knew I had to get my friend's shotgun from his closet. So I crossed the hall, grabbed the shotgun, and ran to the living area. And there is my buddy pinning the guy against the wall, and in his hand is some large knife. So I racked the shotgun thinking there wasn't one in the chamber. Ends up there was one. So it jams when I pump forward, and the guy stops and looks at me. I freak out and start to stumble backwards. The dude pushes my friend off and turns towards me. I come to my senses and rack the shotgun again, and the shell flies out, and the new one loads. I don't remember pulling trigger. I think the adrenaline literally took my body over. Just boom, and the whole room shook. My ears were ringing, and everything felt so vivid. And the guy just collapsed. No scream, no theatrics. He just fell to the floor face down. My friend grabbed the knife from the ground and ran to the phone to call 911. I remember standing there just looking at him. I couldn't move. It felt like an hour. But as soon as my friend was assured the police were on the way, he came and got me to sit down. That was 18 years ago, and it still feels fresh. It was an emotional month or two afterwards. I wasn't charged with anything. Police were very understanding, and the family of the guy didn't press for any sweets. But I kept going back and forth on whether I did the right thing. But I've accepted the guy had a knife. I was scared. In the end, both my friend and I survived. I'll let God decide if I was in the right. My brother was dying, and I deliberately OD'd him on Dilaudid. The hospice nurse pretty much left me set up to do it. He was in so much pain. I think about it a lot, and I do believe I did the right thing. But sometimes I look at his daughter, and the guilt comes at me. I ran over a pedestrian who jumped in front of my car. Still wake up sweating about it. I knew of a girl who did this to commit suicide. The poor guy was pretty shaken up, obviously. She had tried several times before in different ways. This poor guy just happened to be driving when she chose to do it there and then. I am a physician and provided medical assistance in dying to a man with end-stage COPD. It is legal where I live, and he would get out of breath eating a sandwich. I don't think it changed me, but it was the first time as a doctor I went from trying to keep someone alive to giving them the medication to die. I shot a home invader 10 years ago, protecting my girlfriend and I who were living on our own not long after high school. I hit him in the chest after he broke and climbed in through a window and came into our bedroom. I don't relish it. He had a family and kids, but I would make the same decisions again, as who knows what would have happened had I not. It bothered me a lot more years ago, but I've long since come to terms with it. I had a hard time feeling comfortable in my own home again for a while, but it almost feels like it happened to a different person now. The last time it affected me was a few years after. I was working and someone broke glass the next aisle over, which really took me back. My dad died of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, but in the hospital, my mom couldn't tell them that it was okay to disconnect his life support, ventilator, dialysis, fluids, so many fucking tubes. I had to. They removed the breathing tube, and the tough old bastard started breathing again on his own. It took about 3 hours before his body couldn't make it work. His pulse would get above 50 BPM, then drift into bradycardia, and then he'd bounce back, never going below 25 BPM. Then, it dipped to 19, and it held there for about 30 seconds before finally going to the like on TV. I know I didn't kill him, but I was the one who agreed to disconnect him from life support. He was gonna die anyway, but having had a tiny hand in the process haunted me for a few years afterward. It'll be 18 years ago, this Halloween. My parents died on Halloween and Christmas Day. Hooray! So I'm not shaken by it any longer, but those first couple of anniversaries, there was a guilty feeling that I knew was silly, but that still made me feel awful. I told the pilots and bombers where to drop the bombs. Still not sure how I feel about it. I interviewed a man who was 18 and deployed during the Vietnam War. Never saw combat, but called in coordinates for bomb drops while stationed in Thailand. He was told by superiors that the coordinates he was calling in were enemy positions or had no civilians, despite most of the locations being schools, temples, farms, etc. He accidentally came across documents that confirmed he had been calling in coordinates for populated civilian targets, and if he told anyone, he would go home in a body bag. Lived with that for 40 years before finally being able to talk about it. It definitely tore him up really bad knowing he was killing children and farmers, not active enemies. I was on leave in 2007 and struck and killed a 15-year-old girl whose mom had hit a dog in the night, and I couldn't see anyone in the road because she was bent over the dog, and the car had bright lights shining at me. I slowed down and merged to the middle of the road to avoid side-swiping anyone on the side, not seeing the girl. Killed her on impact. I still get paranoid when I see kids on the side of the road or running out into it. Had nightmares for years after. All I could remember was running to the girl's body and doing compressions and seeing her lifeless eyes staring back, while her mom beat me in the back of the head screaming murderer. The FHP did an entire investigation and ruled I wasn't at fault, because I was sober, and the rental car I had luckily had an onboard computer that recorded all the events prior and after to the accident. I still have guilt and doubt, always questioning myself, is there anything else I could have done to avoid it? A female friend of mine had been in a relationship with a guy whose drug habit made him pretty volatile for a few years. He became infamous for his fits of rage, and even hit her on more than one occasion. When she finally left him, I wanted to help her moving out of their shared home. When we got there, he was obviously high as a kite, and almost immediately accused me of having an affair with her, and being the reason she broke up with him. Honestly, I do not even remember what my answer was, but things escalated immediately, and he pulled out a knife and lunged at me. My dumbest mistake that day was to enter the flat far enough that he managed to position himself between me and the front door, so I could not just get the hell out of there. I tried to get the knife out of his hands, and ended up with some pretty deep cuts, but somehow managed to avoid getting stabbed, and finally got him into a headlock and wrestled him to the ground. I started choking him out, while keeping the arm holding the knife away from me with my other hand. After what felt like ages, he stopped struggling and got limp. I immediately let go of him, and got my friend to call the police and an ambulance. She had been frozen in place, and turned completely pale during the whole ordeal. Her ex-boyfriend kept completely unresponsive until the emergency services arrived. I had to go to the hospital myself as my cuts required me to get stitched up. While I was still in hospital, the policeman, who had been at the scene after arriving along with the ambulance, informed me that her ex-boyfriend had been pronounced dead. I was under investigation for manslaughter for a brief period of time, but it was quickly ruled as self-defense. Honestly, I don't really know how to put into words how I feel about what happened that day. I am sad about losing my friendship to her after this event, as she said seeing me always reminds her of this incident, and she couldn't bear it. I feel stupid for letting it even come so far. I should have known better than to enter the flat or even interact with him in his state, as I had known about his outbursts for years. I never was a fan of people doing heavy drugs, but since that incident, I get extremely uncomfortable around people who are obviously high on something, which in my hometown is a surprisingly common sight, unfortunately. And, if that makes any sense, somehow I feel bad for not feeling bad about what I did. To this day I am convinced he really tried to kill me that day, and I only did what I had to. Edit. Since this blew up more than expected and there were some comments I feel require answers for various reasons, I think I have to add a few more details, so here goes. As for the EXE's drug habit, according to what he himself used to brag about, he would take copious amounts of whatever he could get his hands on, but his drug of choice was meth. As someone in the comments already suggested, yes, he did have multiple health issues due to almost a decade of drug abuse. These issues, as well as the drugs he was still high on during the whole incident, also significantly contributed to the way he died, and are part of the reason why I was acquitted of my charges. For those who claim my friend must be a shitty person, trust me, I thought the same of her for quite a while. Like I was in that situation because of her, and after all of that she treated me like I had the plague and started avoiding me at all cost. I felt incredibly betrayed for a long time. But I know that when it comes to abuse, handling anything about it rationally as the victim is way easier said than done, even without something as drastic as this happening. And to her credit, she testified in court basically confirming my story. And no, I did not intend to kill him. Think about whether or not choking him out might risk his life, or keep track of how long the fight or the chokehold went on for. Believe it or not, I was mentally mostly occupied with trying not to get stabbed. I'm a survivor of a home invasion. To keep it short, 2 men broke in my house, and I shot both of them. One didn't make it, and the other is in a wheelchair for the rest of his life with a colostomy bag. He only survived because I rendered aid and called it in fast. This was also during COVID. I kinda lost a lot of empty over the years because of various things, so I didn't, and still don't lose any sleep or have issues with it. I'm a nurse, so my family was depending on me at the end as our mom was at home, dying of cancer. They would ask about every little sound, why her body was doing certain things, etc. Though she'd been unconscious for days, I continued to give her pain meds. Once she started with the death rattle, they were certain she was choking and begged me to suction her. I tried to explain, but they'd have none of it, so, reluctantly I began to gently clear her throat. At that point, she took her last breath. I felt so guilty that I'd taken the air away from her and caused her to die too soon. It didn't help that I also had to announce her time of death. It's been 26 years, and I have still not cried over her dying. I think of her as being on one of the cruises she loved to take. She and I had a rocky relationship, and there's many things left unresolved. My father was diagnosed with cancer at 48. I sat by his side for 8 months, and a few surgeries chemo. I was the one tasked with power of attorney, and in the end, it was my call when he became comatose. It was one of, if not the hardest things I have ever had to do in my life, even though my childhood wasn't great, and we never really got a lot of quality time together. I stepped up to that out of love and respect to life. I had to put my cousin down with a kitchen knife because he was trying to rape my little sister and had nearly strangled me to death when I walked in and realized what was happening and tried to put a stop to it. I still see his face in my sleep, and a specific commercial jingle puts me into debilitating panic attacks because it was what was playing on the TV after the few seconds of struggling had ended. Don't tell me knives are all you need to defend yourself. I pray nobody ever has to experience what I experienced. 15 years ago, I shot and killed a 52-year-old father of 3 in self-defense. Long story short, I accidentally disrespected a funeral procession of 200-plus bikers by passing them in the right lane. They were going below the speed limit, and I just slowly passed them on a battered Honda Rebel from the early 90s. Several bikes turned out of the procession and almost ran me off the road, so I turned into a bank's parking lot thinking they would leave me alone, but they followed me. I ended up with 6 guys surrounding me, and when one grabbed me and threatened my life, I fought back, smashed my helmeted head into the first guy's face, but had 2 more jump me and start battering. I pulled my handgun and fired only 1 shot, but that was all it took. He went down like a puppet with cut strings. Just one moment he's swinging his helmet at me, and the next he's dead. Lost my phone in the struggle, but bank security guard called the cops. Police, ambulance, handcuffs, interrogation rooms, ECT followed for hours afterwards. Ended up not being charged. Everything I did was judged self-defense. But I'll regret doing that for the rest of my life. With hindsight, I now know that I could have won the fight. I was 20 years younger than any of them, wearing a full-face helmet and gear with hard plastic plates on the chest, back, and arms. Even my gloves had plastic armor on them. They had jeans and a leather vests. It's weird. I know that given the same situation I'd make the same decision each time, but I still regret doing it. I'm a locomotive engineer. I've had a few people run at me and a few others stand there. The only one that bothered me was a woman that accidentally got hit. She was near the edge of the platform with her big headphones on and watching her iPad, wearing a plaid skirt, so I thought it was a kid. When I learned it wasn't, I was fine. Getting hit by a train is one of the easiest things to avoid. It's either intentional or natural selection. That's how I get through it. Used to work in law enforcement. Had a job come in about a male smashing the rental property up he was living in with an axe. Me and my partner drive code to the job as a weapon is involved, and he is actively destroying property. We arrived at the address, and I can see in the distance there is a small fire underneath the house. The house was a high-set one raised up on stilts, so there was about 8 to 10 feet from the ground to the floor of the house. I could see the male under the house run from where the fire was to away from the house. We're just about at the front driveway now, and based on his actions it looks like he was ready to run away. I jump out of the car ready to run after him, as I thought he was trying to run away. He stops and picks something up which I didn't quite catch with a fence and the bonnet of the police car in the way of my vision. He runs from where he picked that item up to the driveway and keeps running down the driveway, whereby he was about 15 to 20 feet in front of me, and I could see it was a machete in his hand. He raises the machete at me to swing it at the direction of my neck. I let 3 rounds out of gun at him, with 2 hitting him. He fell to the ground, and I had to backstep to avoid getting hit by the machete. He tried getting back up with the machete, but fell to the ground. I tried CPR on him a moment later, but there was no response. I think from getting out of the car and shots fired was about 3 to 5 seconds. I guess this sort of counts. My abuser killed himself after losing his appeal. I think it's a good thing because I know he won't touch any more kids now, and I am not losing sleep over it. And yes, the events were directly related. I stayed silent for a long time, and when the truth finally caught up with him, he decided he would rather die than go back to prison. I shot and killed my then girlfriend's abuser. He was abusive to her while she was dating him, stalked her, controlled who she spoke with, and constantly called her names. She managed to get out of the relationship after he attacked her one night while holding their kid. She got a protective order against him which he abided by, for the most part. He still stalked her, as she reported seeing his car outside her office, and while she was with clients in the community. A few months after the attacker and I started talking and went on a date. When she returned home from the date, he broke into her home and attacked her, strangled her, and left deep bruises all over her. Thankfully, she had no serious injuries. During the attack, he showed her the pictures he took of us on our date, revealing he stalked us the whole time. He then left her home telling her that he was on his way to kill me. He didn't try this time. He sent me nasty messages on Facebook, threatening me and her. A warrant was put out for his arrest, and a month later, he was finally caught but released with an ankle monitor a month later. Fast forward about a year. During this time, he sent numerous emails and texts to either myself, her, or family members, basically harassing us by speaking about how awful she is. We refused to let this hinder our relationship, and we soon ended up engaged. Assuming he found out about the engagement, as a few weeks later, while I was returning home from her house, he ambushed me and started attacking me. Thankfully, I was carrying a gun on me. I began doing this after our first date. I was able to push him away from me, but he kept on trying to get me. I yelled for help and for him to stop, but nothing changed. He said he was going to kill me, and so I pulled my gun out and shot him. He died in the hospital, and thankfully, I was not charged with anything or even detained/arrested. This occurred a little over a year ago, and her and I are no longer together. She wasn't upset with me about what happened and even expressed relief that he was gone, as she was anticipating 18 years of fighting him over their kid, and she was tired of looking over her shoulder each and every day. I still think the shooting had a role in us breaking up. I had nightmares about the incident for a few months, but it really didn't bother me all that much. I have zero regrets about killing him. Not only was he going to kill or seriously hurt me if I didn't, but odds are he would have tried something on her and their kid again. Even though we aren't together anymore, I still take comfort in knowing that she is now forever safe from him, and she can raise her son away from a monster like him. Edit. Added spaces LOL. I still struggle to type in English and often forget to put the spaces or know where to put them. 20 years ago, wifey, my baby girl, and I were home asleep. It was about 0200. We were awakened by a loud crash and our shelter having a heart attack. I heard someone yell at Missy, then she yelped. A big old guy was standing at the end of the hallway. He took a couple of steps and I told him to stop, get on the floor, and put his hands behind his head or I'd fire. He stopped for a couple of seconds, then took another couple of steps. I repeated myself. Again, he stopped, then took a couple more steps. This time I said if he took another step, I was going to put a .45 slug center mass. He took another step and I fired. Does it still affect me? Once everyone was done, I laid down and took a nap. I was protecting my wife and my baby girl. I didn't know what he was on. The only thing not in his system was Tylenol, and I wasn't going to take any chances. Combat deployment to Baghdad in 06-07. Shot a man in the chest from about 100 meters away during a large firefight with Syrian jihadis. He was firing his AK down an alley towards an IA unit moving under contact. Watched him drop and never get up. I would sometimes think about how both of our lives led up to that moment where he stopped, and about how his loved ones were probably wrecked over his death. War sucks, but we both made our choices that put us there, and neither one of us belonged in Iraq. My mom was in home hospice at her home, and I was her primary caregiver. Stage 4 head and neck cancer. Obviously, the cancer really killed her, but I gave her the morphine that allowed her to let go and slip away from our mortal plane. Standard dose, nothing crazy. It was 6 years ago, and I remember every moment of it as I watched her breathing slow and then nothing, and she was gone. It was June 10th, 2019 at 4:10 a.m., and my dad and brother were fast asleep. I had to wake them up and break the news. For the year after, antidepressants helped, and therapy was invaluable. I will never forget it, and I have no guilt, as she was pretty much begging to die the last couple days she was with us. That was the hardest part. The death itself, while heartbreaking, was more a moment of relief for all of us. I think of my mom every day and miss her like crazy. Going through that experience fundamentally changed my life view. I was on the highway in the right lane. The car in front of me changed lanes, and before I knew it, I was on top of a scooter that should not have been on the highway. He rolled up my hood and onto my windshield, then fell back onto the highway as I hit the brakes and pulled onto the shoulder. The cops drew my blood to see if I'd been drinking. My phone and car were seized for the investigation, which took the longest 10 months of my life. I found out they concluded the investigation when I got a voicemail to come pick up my phone at the police station, and a couple weeks later, a call to arrange for my car to be picked up. While I was in my car waiting for the tow truck, the investigator called me telling me I was being cited for careless driving. My insurance company settled with the family for about $600,000. I had increased our umbrella policy limit about a week before the accident. It's been 10 years. I mostly don't think about it anymore unless something brings it to mind. But the anniversary was in May, and it was a very rough day. I still don't drive in that lane on that section of the highway. About 5 years ago, my daughter's friend's brother was killed on his motorcycle when he hit a truck that made a turn in front of him. About a year later, I found out that the truck was driven by the father of another one of her friends. I wanted to reach out to him, but the last thing I wanted to do was reopen the wound if he was healing. Thank you so much for watching. In the comments below, share your own similar stories. And don't forget to check out our other videos.